Hey everyone, I'm Travis and this is Abby. Welcome to Concussion, a podcast where we dive deep into the world of brain trauma, breakthrough treatments, and inspiring recovery stories. Hey everyone, I'm Travis. Welcome to Concussion. Joining us, our go-to expert on all things concussion related, Abby. We're here to talk about some real-life scenarios and the questions people often have about concussions. Abby, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Travis. I'm excited to shed some light on what happens if a concussion goes unrecognized or untreated for a long period.
Let's start with the basics. What happens if someone has a concussion and they don't get treated for days or weeks or even months? They said at the track I refused to go to the hospital. Luckily, my brother was there to convince me otherwise.
A concussion, even though it's sometimes called a mild traumatic brain injury, it can have serious consequences if it's neglected. Symptoms like dizziness, headaches, fatigue, sensitivity to lights or sensitivity to sound can persist on. Over time, if nothing's done about it, these symptoms can lead to chronic health issues or issues with performing at work or how you interact with your family and your overall mental health.
Follow up. What's the difference? Say I didn't go.
Well, the swelling in your brain would continue to build and you would have gone unconscious again. Especially with what you had going on. You had a dissection of your carotid arteries, and that would not have been a good scenario. So either someone would have found you unconscious and get you the help that you needed, or it would have been a very different outcome.
Could you give us a real life example to illustrate what happens with like more mild concussions if they go untreated?
Absolutely. Let's go through a real life scenario to help illustrate this. Let's use a teacher who is at school supervising her kids at recess, and then she gets blindsided by a kickball when she didn't even see it coming. So the kickball hits her in the side of the head, but because she didn't see it coming, she wasn't bracing herself for it, and it knocks her to the ground, and then she hits the other side of her head on the ground. She's a little shaken up, but puts on a brave face because she's the one responsible for looking after all the kids that are out there at recess. She stands back up, feels a little off, but figures it'll go away. And then once recess is over, they go back in the classroom, and she notices a slight headache starts to develop. She probably takes some ibuprofen or something just to be able to mute the headache a little bit and get on with the day. But then she's standing up at the front of the room and intends to just show her kids something on the board, but she turns around quickly to answer one of her students and then feels like the room is spinning. Her body's swaying, she feels like off balance. She gets through the rest of the day somehow, just muscling through the symptoms that are slowly evolving. And then when she's driving home, she's super uneasy. The cars are passing by her and it feels like she's kind of in this tunnel where she can't track what's going on, but notices that she's not nearly as quick or confident as she normally is when she's driving. And then the lights from other cars are coming towards her and just feels like they're like cutting through her vision. When she gets home, goes right to bed. The next morning, has a little bit of nausea when she first wakes up, but still able to get a little bit of breakfast in and muster up the energy to get dressed and get back to work. The headache comes back. The lights in the classroom seem too bright, and all of the noise of the chatter of the students in the room just really make her on edge. She had a great plan intended for that day, a fun interactive lesson, but then she ends up changing her lesson plans at the last minute and gives the students individual work for them to do quietly at their desks instead of the group activity she had planned. She gets through the day with 2 rounds of ibuprofen, but spent most of the day sitting at her desk with her head in her hands. That night, she wants to do the same thing. Come home, go straight to bed. But this time, it creates a little bit more disruption at home. The night before, her husband made dinner and took care of the 2 young kids, got them through their homework, bath time, got laundry started, all the things that need to be done. But this night, her husband is left to manage all of this without an explanation that make sense to him. Hit by a kickball, that's not cutting it. Those are soft. They're the same ones that you throw at people in dodgeball. It doesn't make sense that you're having all this difficulty even the day after from getting hit by a kickball. She's got 2 kids at home. One's got karate class that night that she is responsible for taking him to. And then the other kid has baseball practice that her husband has to take him to because he coaches the team. The yelling of the kids in the karate class is just too much to bear. Another mom comes up to her to make small talk, and she ends up giving one-word answers and just looks uninterested, but really she's just exhausted. This other mom can't figure out what she did to upset her, but takes the hint that she wants to be left alone and just steps away. Her kid at karate wants to talk about all the new skills that he's learning, all the fun that he had, and kind of carry on with all the conversation of his excitement from being around his friends. She doesn't have the energy for any of that, or even just the concentration to listen to what he's saying. She needs all of her focus just to be able to drive home and get back to her bed. This process continues, barely making it through the day with her exhaustion that is just too much to bear. She's feeling like she's swaying and her surroundings are moving anytime she stands up or makes a turn when she's walking. She's not able to do her usual tasks at home, and her husband's starting to get really frustrated with having to take on more responsibilities and do more than his usual share. This friction continues. He has to do his job and both the kids' activities, the homework, getting dinner ready, all of the things that normally would be split between the two of them because she doesn't have the energy to even interact with the kids, let alone do all the tasks she normally does. So as you hear this scenario, as this all plays out, what stands out to you, Travis?
Oh, yeah. First off, fatigue. I live that, and I know you have no extra energy for anything. You just feel like it's 100% to do the bare minimum.
In severe cases, concussions can elicit swelling in the brain early on. The presence of that fluid can force your brain to work much harder in an attempt to perform your usual functions. And that definitely requires immediate medical attention. In less severe cases, the diffuse axonal injury or the diffuse axonal shearing that occurs as the brain moves abruptly in the skull can cause fatigue because now the usual pathways that used to exist now have to reroute. Like that example that you gave of you take the same way home every single day from work, then all of a sudden there's construction or a road closure and you have to think about and work around how to get back to the route that you need to be able to get home. That same thing is happening constantly in the brain of trying to rewire and reroute to do the things that used to come just very naturally. And this requires more work, more metabolic energy, and it all has to rely on the brain to find those new pathways. I can see the illustrations of fatigue in her actually needing to sleep at first, but then it's in the context of not having the patience to do what she usually does at work or with her kids at home. Like, her brain used up all of the energy just to do the basic things and not have that energy left over for all the other conversations, interactions, and activities that she would normally do that fill up the rest of her evening and her school day. What else do you hear in her case?
You said she turned around, the board felt like it was spinning or like something was off. This reminds me of what it would be like at work when I tried to move quickly, grab something. A coworker came from one side to the other. Felt like I kind of stepped off a merry-go-round.
That vestibular system, right?
Yeah, definitely plays tricks on you. Sometimes, like, you're not sure if something is moving or you're moving. Like, you have your stopped at a red light and you know you're stopped, but the cars behind or beside you, like, they keep moving and you kind of just peer over to them and you, for a second, think that it's you moving.
Yes, that kind of sensation. And it can be unnerving if it's happening with just simple body or head movements. Is there anything else that stands out to you?
Why should she have that much trouble?
Believe it or not, I've seen a mild concussion from being hit with a pillow.
Get out of here. No way. A frickin' pillow?
It was a thicker decorative pillow, but still, what's similar here is that neither person saw it coming. So the person that got hit with the kickball, they weren't expecting the impact. Their neck muscles weren't prepared to be able to protect their head. And then the person who was hit by the decorative pillow also didn't see it coming, didn't have that bracing mechanism in order to protect their head when getting hit with that whiplash type mechanism. And both of those seem like they were pretty gentle objects, not something that would do a lot of harm. But if the head accelerates in relationship to the neck, it can cause those concussion type forces. And then after the impact of someone getting hit with the pillow, the head moved quite a bit, like I said, because she wasn't braced for the impact. And then she ended up falling back in that disorientation and experienced a second impact from falling back that way. So she ended up hitting the back of her head on the floor afterwards. But still, this could have been the same scenario for this teacher. Depending on how fast the kickball was moving when it hit her, I imagine a fifth grader can probably kick a kickball pretty hard to create that type of impact force. And again, she wasn't braced for it. But that ricochets into another impact as they hit the ground and impact their head. But even if that weren't the case, just the whiplash mechanism alone could have been enough to be able to create concussion forces.
Well, that makes a little more sense, especially if she fell and hit her head. We mentioned it before. Falling down is nothing to take lightly, especially if your head breaks the fall. That's why you should never walk with your hands in your pockets, kids. You'll want to have something to break the fall. That's not your head. But anyway, I guess her husband wouldn't think of it that way. It sounds like something minor. It wouldn't lead to big trouble. But I do hear all the concussion signs in what she experienced. Couldn't tolerate lights, the noise from a bunch of kids yelling, like driving her crazy, and she definitely didn't want to make small talk, especially when you're feeling like that.
Safety advice from the guy who raced motorcycles. Never walk around with your hands in your pockets. Things have changed for you a little bit since then, huh? Now, you lived this injury, but for people listening who haven't personally experienced that, what happens a few weeks down the line if she keeps pushing through these symptoms?
I mean, she's probably still having trouble driving. Lights, mainly. Her husband might be frustrated with her. He might have to be doing a little more around the house. Maybe she doesn't find it as interesting. She may be doing the bare minimum with her teaching.
And she doesn't have the option to come back out of work because she wasn't taken out in the first place. Let's say, for the sake of the argument, that she does report it. Let's say she goes to her principal and says, I got hit by a kickball at recess a couple weeks ago and I haven't been right since. The principal may dismiss her completely, kind of like her husband did. But let's say even the principal takes her seriously and she's able to file a workers' comp claim. So she gets sent to an urgent care or an occupational health clinic or something of the sort, and she tells them what happened. Can you guess what their response is going to be when she tells them about this?
3 days out of work.
Right. That's the most common outcome. It's like Robitussin and a Band-Aid. That'll fix what ails you. But let's say this was through an occupational health clinic, and they sent her for an x-ray of her neck and a CT of her head. What do you think that they're going to find?
With an injury like that, probably nothing. It's not like she broke any bones or had a brain bleed. Didn't we say the only way to confirm a concussion was to identify a brain bleed?
Well, a brain bleed is what's going to go to the top of the priority list in a multi-trauma, like if a car accident or falling off the roof or something. But if there's no brain bleed, then the head goes to the bottom of the priority list, and then whatever broken bones, organ lacerations, or significant blood loss from anything else would go to the top. And when the head is at the bottom of the priority list, it often gets neglected once there's a treatment plan in place and things start moving forward with those other body parts. In this scenario, there would be a very, very slim chance of detecting any injury on a CT scan. So let's go the extra step here. Let's say they get the imaging results back. They see that nothing's wrong, so they have nothing to really identify on that, but they still recommend this person needs physical therapy. But it's through their occupational health clinic. So they have their own physical therapy there a lot of times. It's usually pretty generic physical therapy. So what might happen for her there?
She might get her ankles stretched out and rubbed.
If she were lucky enough to find me 9 years ago, you're probably right. But if she's being referred for a concussion, she might get some work with her balance, maybe some general exercise, or whatever a generic protocol would have. But if she doesn't find a specialist, like we discussed last time, she might not get a chance to get those more profound disruptions addressed, like her ability to dual task, light and noise sensitivity, concentration, reaction time, all those things that make a huge difference in how she would be able to tolerate being a teacher, a spouse, and a mother.
But this is everything were to go like best case scenario for her. Everyone doing things as they recognized that she had a concussion. Like the principal getting a workman's comp claim going, or, urgent care doing some tests and referring her to a concussion specialist. But from what you've said, it doesn't always happen that way. It didn't with me.
Right. The majority of the time, with a mechanism of injury like that, it doesn't happen that way. Honestly, it probably would have stopped with the principal. He probably would be confused by the report of the injury and think, well, you've been working for the past few weeks. Why wouldn't you have said something right away if it was that bad? How do I know something else didn't happen outside of here and you're trying to blame it on that so you can get out of work? Every excuse you can think of, what are they going to do to be able to find someone to replace her? All these reasons for not addressing it are going to come right to the forefront. And if you're someone who's sustained a concussion, you have to overcome all of that, all the skepticism, all the lack of knowledge, all of the, you'll be fine. I know someone who had a concussion. They were fine. Did you experience anything along those lines after you went back to work?
Well, I didn't talk about my symptoms because I didn't want to start making excuses for why I was struggling. Like, I'm not the excuse type guy. But with having an accident as severe as bad as mine was, I imagine some people would understand if I said that I was having some problems. But if one of my coworkers came in and said the same thing, they were having all these issues, like the same ones the teacher was having, I don't think people would take them seriously at all.
Because she doesn't have a cast on her head, right?
Exactly. If you can't see the injury, how can other people conceptualize an injury that you can't see?
Now, in the worst case scenario, if this goes on for years without any healthcare professional putting the pieces together or anyone in her circle of friends or family identifying that she might have a concussion, what do you think things would look like for her a year down the line?
If she deals with headaches like that for years, sheesh, concussion headaches are terrible. That changes people. When you have pain like that for so long, honestly, if I had to do the whole crystal ball thing, there's no way she'd be a teacher anymore. Not with all those screaming kids. I don't know, maybe she does an office job, but then she has the strain of her eyes looking at a computer all day. Definitely divorced. Husband can't understand why the wife isn't the same. Maybe she's more resentful. She gets angry. But the emotional toll, depression, anxiety, losing everything she worked for, debilitating.
And you wouldn't believe how often this type of thing happens. Someone has something happen to their head or neck that even the person who experiences it thinks is relatively minor, but then the symptoms just won't go away. Or even if they do the right thing and make a doctor's appointment and explain everything that they're going through, unless that doctor has a high concussion IQ, it may not lead that person into the hands of a concussion specialist.
Heck, mine was diagnosed and I didn't even get into the hands of a concussion specialist. I mean, it's been almost 9 years and I'm still trying to figure it out. I mean, that's why we're doing this. If it happens to you, now you know. You got to advocate for yourself, or you could be going through misery for 9 years. If you are a family member, make sure you look for the signs of someone going through something that they may not realize.
It's tough to watch someone go through that knowing that there's solutions available.
Yeah, I'm hoping people hear this and then they start being concussion detectives. Especially if somebody's going through this kind of stuff. It's difficult.
This week, we'll go through another unfortunate reality when this happens in sports.
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Check us out next time. Thanks again for tuning in to Concussion. If you found this episode helpful, be sure to follow us and share it with someone you may think will find it useful. You can catch us on Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. For updates and behind-the-scenes content, check out our TikTok, Instagram, and X. Or join our growing community on Discord, where we dive deeper into concussion recovery and support each other along the way. All links are in the description, so see you there. And until next time, keep your head in the game and keep it protected.